Let us start the ecology, environment ecology, the conservation efforts. Next chapter is conservation efforts, protected areas. After the enactment of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, the protected areas were formed in India. The background was also provided by the National Policy for the Wildlife Conservation adopted in 1970. Wildlife sanctuaries and national parks. The Wildlife Protection Act 1972 provides for the declaration of wildlife sanctuaries and national parks by the state governments or central government. The national parks enjoy higher degree of protection compared to the wildlife sanctuaries. The activities live livestock grazing like livestock grazing, which are regulated in wildlife sanctuaries, are prohibited in national parks. Alteration of boundary of a national park or wildlife sanctuary can be done only on the recommendation of the National Board for Wildlife. Conservation and community reserves. The provisions to set up these were provided under Wildlife Protection Act by an amendment in 2003. Community reserves, conservation reserves. Community reserves. These are notified by the state government on any community land or private land with the consent of the community or the individual owning the land. These are managed through the management committees. Community reserves are set up with the aim of enhancing the socio-economic conditions of the people as well as conserving wildlife. The land use pattern in a community reserve can be changed only in accordance with a resolution passed by the management committee and approved by the state government. Conservation reserves. Conservation reserves are the areas adjacent to national parks and the wildlife sanctuaries which are declared so with the aim of protecting the landscape, seascape, and habitat. These are declared by the state government. It is managed by the Conservation Reserve Management Committee. First conservation reserve of the country was set up in Tamil Nadu. Marine and coastal protected areas. These are set up with the aim to protect and conserve marine ecosystems in pristine conditions. Marine protected areas MPAs are set up with the aim to conserve lagoons, corals, mangroves, estuaries, and sea grass beds. It comprises of national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. Biosphere reserves. These intend to conserve the flora and fauna of protected regions and also the human communities who inhabit these regions. The International Coordination Council ICC of UNESCO introduced the designation of biosphere reserves in 1971. The National Biosphere Reserve Program was initiated by the Government of India in 1986, which is guided by the UNESCO Man and Biosphere Map Program. UNESCO Man and Biosphere Map Program. Launched in 1971, it is an intergovernmental scientific program that aims to establish a scientific basis for the improvement of relationships between people and their environments. In India, there are 18 biospheres and 10 of them are part of UNESCO MAP program. 3 zones of biosphere reserve. The core area comprises the strictly prohibited, protected and the core area comprises a strictly protected ecosystem that contributes to the conservation of landscape ecosystems, species, and genetic variation. The buffer zone surrounds or adjoins the core areas and is used for the activities compatible with sound ecological practices that can reinforce scientific research, monitoring, training, and education. The transition zone is the part of the reserve where the greatest activity is followed, fostering economic and human development that is socio-culturally and ecologically sustainable. This is core zone, buffer zone, and the transition zone. Biodiversity hotspots. The term was coined by the Norman Mears. Conditions to qualify as a biodiversity hotspot: it must contain 1500 plus species of the vascular plants as endemic and it must be lost 70% of its original area. In India, there are 4 biodiversity hotspots. Himalaya includes the entire Indian Himalayan region and the falling in Pakistan, Tibet, Nepal, Bhutan, China and Myanmar, Indo-Burma, includes entire northeastern India, except Assam and Andaman, and group of islands, and Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and southern China. Sunda the lands includes Nicobar groups of islands and Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, Philippines. Western Ghats and Sri Lanka includes entire Western Ghats and Sri Lanka. Sacred groves. These are the spaces protected by the local communities because of their religions and the traditional beliefs associated with the nature. These can be in the form of few trees or large forested areas. These are usually associated with the local deities. Note: United Nations has designated 22nd May as the International Day for Biological Diversity Acts and Policies. Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Objective: to effectively protect the wildlife of the country and to control poaching, smuggling, and illegal trade in wildlife and its derivatives. The act extends to the whole of India except for Jammu and Kashmir. The 5 kinds of protected area can be notified under this act. It has 6 schedules based on the varying degree of the protection provided to the wildlife. Schedule 1 and Part 2 of Schedule 2 provide absolute protection to the species enlisted in them. Species in Schedule 3 and 4 are also protected, but violations attract lower penalties. Schedule 5 has the vermins which may be hunted. Schedule 5 has the vermins which may be hunted. The central government may, by notification, declare any wild animal other than those specified in the Schedule 1 and Part 11 of the Schedule H to be vermin. Schedule 6 has the plants which are forbidden from cultivation. Biological Diversity Act 2002. It is an umbrella legislation enacted in order to help in realizing the objectives of the CBD Convention on Biological Diversity, to which India is a party. It is aimed at conservation of biological resources and associated knowledge, as well as facilitating access to them in a sustainable manner and through a just process. The Act provides for the formation of National Biodiversity Authority, State Biodiversity Authority, Biodiversity Management Committees at local level. National Wildlife Action Plan. The first such plan was adopted in 1983. Third National Wildlife Action Plan was announced by the Union Ministry of the Environment, Forest and the Climate Change (MOEFCC) for years of 2013 to 2031. The plan is drafted by a committee appointed by the MOEFCC under the chairmanship of J.C. Kala. The Wildlife Action Plan for the first time recognizes the impact of the climate change on the wildlife. It calls for the landscape approach in a conservation of wildlife. It recommends anticipatory planting along the ecological gradients, assisted migration of wildlife. It is to prevent the death of certain species of trees that fail to adjust to the new environmental conditions caused by the climate change. Project Tiger. It is a centrally sponsored scheme of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, launched in 1973 for providing central assistance to the tiger states. It governs the tiger reserves created for the protection of the tiger and its petty. Presently, there are 50 notified tiger reserves in the country. Project Elephant. It is a centrally sponsored scheme launched by the Government of India in 1992. Objective to protect elephants, their habitat and corridors, to address issues of man-animal conflict, welfare of captive elephants. Under this, financial and the technical support is provided to major elephant-bearing states in the country. Monitoring of illegal killing of elephants. MIKE program. MIKE program was started in South Asia in the year 2003. It was mandated by COP resolutions of sites. It was to provide information needed to the elephant range states to make appropriate management and enforcement decisions and to build institutional capacity within the range states for the long-term management of the elephant population. India Rhino Vision 2020. It is an effort to attain the population of at least 3,000 greater one-horned rhinos spread over 7 protected areas in the Indian state of Assam by the year 2020. It is implemented by the Department of Environment and the Forest Assam with Bodo Autonomous Council. The program is supported by WWF, International Rhino Foundation, IRF. International Convention. The Convention on the Biological Diversity (CBD) is one of the key agreements adopted by the Rio Summit in 1992. It entered into force in December 1993. Objectives: the conservation of biological diversity, the sustainable use of the components of the biological diversity, the fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising out of the utilization of the genetic resources. It is illegal binding convention. The agreement covers all ecosystem species and genetic resources. The Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. The Cartagena Protocol to CBD is an international agreement that aims to ensure the safe handling, transfer, and use of living modified organisms (LMOs) resulting from modern biotechnology that may have adverse effects on biological diversity. It also takes into account risks to human health. It was adopted in 2000 and entered into force in 2003. The Nagoya Protocol. It deals with the access to genetic resources and the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from the utilization (ABS). The protocol is a supplementary agreement to the CBD. It was adopted in 2010 in Nagoya, Japan, and entered into force in 2014. Aichi Biodiversity Target. These were adopted by the CBD at its Nagoya conference. These are part of short-term plan, which provides a set of 20 targets. Strategic goal A: address the underlying causes of biodiversity loss by mainstream biodiversity across government and society. The strategic goal B: reduce the direct pressures on the biodiversity and promote sustainable use. Strategic goal C: to improve the status of biodiversity by safeguarding ecosystem, species, and genetic diversity. Strategic goal D: enhance the benefits to all from biodiversity and ecosystem services. Strategic goal E: enhance implementation through participatory planning, knowledge management, and capacity building. CITES. CITES. The Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora is an international agreement between governments. It is an aims at ensuring the international trade in specimens of the wild animals and the plants does not threaten their survival. It is legally binding on the parties. The Secretariat is located at Geneva, Switzerland, and is administered by UNEP. Traffic. It is a non-governmental organization working globally on trade in wild animals and plants in the context of the biodiversity conservation and sustainable development. It is a joint program of WWF and IUCN mission to ensure that trade in wild animals and plants does not threaten the conservation of the nature. Convention on Migratory Species (CMS). It is an environmental treaty under the aegis of the UNEP. It provides a global platform for the conservation and the sustainable use of migratory animals and their habitats. It brings together the states through which migratory animals pass the range states and lays the legal foundation for internationally coordinated conservation measures throughout a migratory range. It is the only global convention specialized in the conservation of the migratory species, their habitats, and the migration routes. IUCN. International Union for Conservation of Nature was established in 1948 in France. It is the first global environmental union. It brought together governments and the civil society organization with a shared goal to protect nature. Its aims was to encourage international cooperation and provide scientific knowledge and tools to guide conservation action. The International Whaling Commission (IWC). It is a global body charged with the conservation of whales and the management of whaling. Headquarters Cambridge, UK. It was set up under the International Convention for the Regulation of Whaling signed in 1946 at Washington, D.C. It aims to provide for the proper conservation of whale stocks and thus make possible the orderly development of the whaling industry. Recently, Japan withdrew from the IWC references websites of organization NEOS Shotganga and this Center on Wildlife and Protected Areas. Next, we are going to start the important institutions. Thank you.